This is day 2 of the November 93 7-day retreat in Springwater. Several people have had questions about what really is meant by identification. The word is used a lot, and it actually has different meanings. And it makes no sense for us to use words if we don't all have the same meaning. And more than meaning, that the word points at the same process that is taking place in us. So, if possible, let's clarify it. What is not meant, or maybe I use the word sometimes that way too, so to identify a bird at the bird feeder. There's a blue jay, there's a grosbeak, cardinal. It's the attributing of a name, assigning a name to the bird, from knowledge, from memory, from agreement. It's called a blue jay everywhere in this country. In Canada, the word blue jay refers to a different bird. So identifying means to assign a name and then know what. I don't have to see the bird. If you told the direct bird, if you tell me about a blue jay, an image can come up in the brain about a blue jay because of the identification. Then we also use the word identify if we can really feel how someone else feels. Let's say we've gone through depression or go through depression, and someone else talks about depression that they're going through. Maybe that doesn't even need to talk about it. One can see, one can identify with that state on another human being. One has experienced it or is experiencing it in oneself. And as one sees or hears it happen in someone else, one understands about it. One makes it the same. It's the same as my feelings and thoughts. I can understand it. I can identify with him or her, what he's going through. The way the word was used yesterday has something of both. The idea that, for instance, the idea that I'm a separate individual entity comprised of whatever we attribute to that entity: body, mind, psyche, soul, personality, character. Believing that all of that is me, that I am that separate body and mind, soul, character, personality, with all its background, all its knowledge and talents and past and imagined future and imagery. That's me. I am that. I'm identified with that idea of myself. Identified with all that I know about me. Me itself lending itself to investigation, what that is, this saying this is me, whether it is anything but a thought process shared by human beings all over the world, not just here in this room. Identification with oneself being all that one can think about and imagine and remember and desire and fear and want about oneself. all one thinks one has and possesses. It can be a real list in the mind if one tries to see what does it all comprise that I am. I remember I used to make lists like that, trying to figure out what is this I, and if I took this away or that, would I still say I? This is me. The knowledge about myself, the ideas, and then that statement, this is me. Maybe this is all I am. Some of us make that statement until we begin to doubt a little bit whether this is all I am, because we may have read or heard someone speak of quite a different state of being in which this kind of identification is not present, even though this body with its processes does not disappear, but it is not thought of as me. And with the ceasing or diminishing of this thinking, this is me, maybe there is an opening up to something different. Not thoughts and ideas and knowledge and memories, but the living presence. So it came up in individual and group meetings. So how do I know that I'm identifying? I want to get at that process because it seems to be a very crucial one in our daily living, in our relationships, in our reactions. What are you describing, or what is described with this identification, more than what has already been done here? How can I tell I'm identified? The warning signal starts blinking when we are attacked. I don't just mean physically attacked with a club, but criticized, found fault with, argued with, told we are not correct, we've made a mistake, we're in error with what we're doing, criticized in what we're doing, our daily work. Maybe a carpenter, and someone tells me this is not good what you did, I'm going to go to a different carpenter who does much better, more careful work than you do. How does this body respond? Criticized in my work. You haven't cleaned the dishes properly. There's still egg on it, sticky. Or being compared with someone else. You're not as friendly, not as positive, not as this or that as someone else. Or I wish you were less negative. Is there something going on, a reaction when we're criticized? Told we're not doing well enough or as well as? There is a defensive reaction, isn't there? Very rarely is one just open to looking whether the person who says it has a point or not. A non-defensive openness in looking is the absence of identification with my looks, my work, my products, my opinions, my views. Usually this openness is not there, and instead there is identification. If you attack my view, you attack me. And I lash out, retaliate, or protect myself. Explain that my view is right, or I cling to it. I explain it over and over again. At best in new words, at worst in the same words that I've already said. observe it so interestingly when one is in conversation. Let's watch it sometime when we're in a group meeting. One has put out something, said something, maybe not thought too much about it. It came maybe quite automatically or habitually, a reaction, a comment. And someone attacks that comment or tries to say, this is really not so, it's like this. Does one now begin to defend and become a little bit more intense in one's expression, restating what one said, because this is me, I'm defending myself. The statement just made, even if it rolled out quite casually, has become a representation of all of what I call me, and I defend it. Attack the other person, to repulse further inroads on my opinion. Because this is what it is felt to be, mine. Identified with me. If my opinion is attacked, I feel attacked, slighted, hurt, diminished. Because the opposite is true. If people say, well, this was a wonderful thing you said, I really learned from that, thank you. Then how does one feel? If there's this identification and I feel better, richer, more important, more strengthened in my feeling of meanness, of the importance of myself, the goodness, the rightness, the safety of being approved of, agreed with. In playing, but maybe playing cards with each other or marbles, whatever game may be engaged in, one becomes one's cards. One becomes that marble that is knocked off the board. Feels bad having to put it back home. Gonna knock the other person off next time. Because one says this is childish, but we've never outgrown that. Of being identified with our possessions, ideas, looks, talents, so forth. So can we begin to question, as this would be the most enormous earth movement, to question the solidity of self-identification with its defenses, to loosen it up, to let it crack here and there, by wondering about it, to wonder about it superficially, more deeply and profoundly, whether it is necessary at all, whether it's needed for our functioning together in harmony, cooperatively, productively, creatively, whether this identification with my part in it is obstructive and the constant cause of irritation and confrontation and conflict with oneself and each other. And please, we're not saying, thou shalt not be identified. We are identified. It is so unconscious, so habitual, so smooth and mechanical, that first of all we need to become aware of it. And want to become aware of it, because if there isn't the willingness and interest, we won't. Well, if a case comes up where defensiveness rears up, defensiveness, attack, protecting one's opinion, one's record, one's person, one's past, one will not want to look at it. One will push attention and understanding aside, or the desire for that, and remain with the habitual, because it seems life-threatening not to defend oneself. does it? The ardor and vigor with which it is pursued by all of us seems to indicate that without thinking about it anymore, there's a deep-seated feeling, I'm defending my life. In defending what? This identity of mine, this image, which is a conglomerate of past experiences. Remembered, represented in the mind as me. As though this conglomerate of memories and ideas represented in the mind as this list comprising me is treated by the body, which includes thought, as though it was alive and needs to be kept alive. It needs to survive. The survival instinct, which is programmed into every cell, into every living cell on this earth, has been sort of now programmed into this creation of me-ness, of self-identity. It must survive at all costs, at the cost of killing others with different identities, or seemingly threatening identities, threatening my own. Because included in this self-identity, we haven't mentioned that yet, is my family, my group, my race, my nation, my religious affiliation, my civilization, my continent. If you attack my race, my nationality, my group, my religion, you're attacking me. I have to fight for its survival. And it's a righteous fight. This is all programmed into our thinking and feeling. Not to be questioned, not needing questioning, because it's sanctioned by history, by tradition. Religious or worldly. So we kill living bodies to keep alive creations of the imagination and memory. Remember, a few years ago on a news program, an interview with an old woman, either Israeli or Palestinian, I don't remember. It doesn't matter. She said, even if 3 generations of us have to die, this land will be ours. The idea of the land, even if it has no population. 3 generations died for it, because in some cases it's more than 3 generations that have fought over identity. To whom does this belong? Who is right? Who is powerful, more powerful than the other? Who will survive? As an idea, do we see that? Idea, memory, tradition, possessions, features, the Aryan features versus the Jewish features. Aryan features shall survive. And we're questioning whether any of that needs to survive at all, reducing it back from the global to the individual here. Do I need, or is this identity needed for a harmonious, productive, creative aliveness, alone and together? I'm not saying get rid of it, drop it, conquer it. No, we're asking, is it needed? And let that question operate in revealing identification with its defenses and hurts, sickness, deep paining and aching, and the reaction, retaliation, or withdrawing altogether for fear of being attacked again. Do I have to be anything represented in the mind other than what is functional for filling out a questionnaire or for letting the post office know where to send the mail? It's nice when we meet each other to find out, what are you doing, what am I doing? It's usually our first question, where do you come from and what are you doing? It's partly habit, but it's also interesting to find out, what is someone else occupied with, interested in? What part of the country is he or she coming from? But it's also sometimes a loaded question. If one would imagine one was traveling in India, far away in the Himalayas or in the south of India, and met somebody from Springwater or Dansville, wouldn't you feel this was your closest friend? I know in traveling, somebody even is from New York State or sees your license and is also from New York State, all of a sudden there is a bonding of two New York Staters who wouldn't give a hoot about each other in a filling station here at home. There's this constant weaving of area, of space, and belonging to the same space, as long as you don't invade my space. But we can share a common space and feel closer to each other. But it's in name only. One time, walking on a beach in Germany, Kyle and I were standing in front of some kind of a poster and talking about that, and a man approached us, an older man, and he practically embraced us. He was an American soldier, officer, and here were two civilian Americans. He hadn't seen civilian Americans in a long time. And he invited us to his apartment, and in his little refrigerator he had a bottle of champagne. He said, I kept this for a special occasion. So we drank champagne together. Because we were all Americans. In a foreign land. See, all the emotions and movements of chemicals that this causes in the brain and throughout the body. One person once from the Zen Center was taking a pilgrimage and was writing very frequent letters and postcards mostly from India. Traveled to all the holy places in India. And then a card arrived from Burma. And the first line was, how good it is to finally be in a Buddhist country. That's many years ago, you can imagine. Because Burma today is not such a hospitable country. I don't even know if you can travel in it. So, was that idea again? Now I am among my fold. So, what are we, if not our identifications, which we're questioning? I'm not saying we can get rid of them, but can we question right into them and shed light on what they are, how they function, how they keep this body energized or de-energized, victorious or victimized? Is that what we are? Our traditional, hereditary, long-standing identities, including the identity of one lifetime, what I have made to believe that I am. And all the organisms' ingenious protective survival techniques to keep it alive, now functioning in the service of imagery and idea. Is that all I am? Is that the content of my life? To protect and enrich and aggrandize my identity, or to live with a poor, painful identity, stepped on by others? Who despise this identity? Can we question it, loosen it up through questioning, looking, observing, in one's moment-to-moment defensiveness, protectiveness, aggressiveness, good feelings, bad feelings, to watch it so that this doesn't become an automatic way of living, or doesn't remain an automatic way of living, but it's like a densely, thickly clouded sky loosening up, showing pieces of blue and rays of light coming through the pieces of blue of a sun that was always there, no matter how thick the clouds, how threatening and dark the looks of them. To remain with this analogy, as far as analogies go, for a moment, that sun which is ever there is this awareness which is not thinking about oneself, but shedding light on the way we think about ourselves and the reactions to our thinking, manifesting in this whole organism as fear and anger and irritation and aggressiveness and depression and so forth. The awareness sheds light on that without taking a position, without judging it. It just sheds light. Like the sun breaking through the clouds, and everything that's there is lit up. Included discarded beer cans, litter, broken trees and whole trees. Although talking about broken trees that are revealed now that the leaves are off, it's always amazing. The ice storm, I don't know how many years ago it was now, 2 or 3 years. And a lot of those limbs are still dangling, but there's enough bark there for the juices to get through. And some of those limbs still bear leaves in the spring and summertime. And then when the leaves are off, the structure is revealed. It doesn't have to be the way we think. Not all trees are straight. Some have broken limbs and still live. So what are we like without leaves? The leaves of our ideas, identities that cover up what? What's the essence of ourselves? We don't know, because what we know is leaves. Ideas, remembrances. So can there indeed be an inquiring without knowing or beyond knowing? An inquiring without knowing into what is not knowable, is that humanly possible? And not to say yes it is or no it isn't, but to wonder about it. In sitting or walking, and just there with what is. The identification comes up so quickly. Oh, this is this, and this is that, and that is this. But can that process itself come into awareness? The process of assigning labels and therefore out of touch with what's really there, including the walker, the sitter, the eater. What are we without identification, without knowing? We're still eating, still chewing, still swallowing and tasting. Still listening. The sound of spoons scraping, or chairs rattling in the room, breathing. Can there be a shift in attending to what's now, including the reactions from the past? Because they also happen now. Can that become transparent in a human being? Thoughts and imagery and reactions that are happening now. Transparent as reactions, as thoughts and images, not as reality. The only reality they have is the reality of an image, the reality of a reaction or a thought. But they're not pointing toward what I really am. What am I really? And the question, if it is really fueled with some interest and also urgency to find out, because our life is troubled, to say the least, with all these identities clashing, confronting, hemming us in, defining us and each other, to the exclusion of being intimate with each other. So if that question has some intensity of wanting to find out, one will start with whatever presents itself and watch it, observe it, learn from it, understand it as it happens over and over again. Without tiring of it. We get tired so quickly if nothing spectacular happens. In meditation, we expect the spectacular. And yet what it reveals, as the mind dwells on the surface, is our moment-to-moment superficial thinking and imaging, and the connection of that with the chemicals throughout the body, causing stress, pain, happiness, pleasure, bliss, fear, anger, agony. To see that connection happening. Because the more it's seen, this thought, this image causes that reaction. And that reaction, which we may call anger, causes more thoughts, and the thoughts cause more of the same emotion. Where is the I in all of that? The more we factually observe the process, the less is there room for an I, unless we just squeeze it in there because we don't want to miss it. We do say and speak, I got angry. I shouldn't be angry. But what actually happened was a thought, a word being spoken, a feeling aroused, a defensive reaction stimulated. Watch it. It's a continuous, seemingly uninterrupted process of thinking and emoting and sensing and more thinking. With no one doing it, it's happening. And in quiet sitting, maybe for the first time one realizes how out of control one is. One can't control these thoughts. One would like to be done with them, be rid of them. The more one strains to be done with them, the more they multiply. But in watching carefully, non-judgmentally, what is happening, the sequences of events, in that careful attention, maybe the processes and thoughts will slow down on their own. When watched, they do. And maybe also yield an understanding that may make them unnecessary to continue. Find out. All of that can happen and does happen. I think I'll leave for tomorrow the question, what really is meditation? Someone brought it up and the question meets up with me wherever I go, here in this country and also in Europe. More people come to these retreats who have studied Krishnamurti and wonder the place of meditation when he seems to have discarded it or put it down, said it's not necessary, or criticized it. So what is meditation? Well, we'll look at that tomorrow. I think we've asked enough questions today. We will end here for today.